ageism, we got sexism, we got every ism that you can imagine. Let me introduce you to one more, okay? I'm violating the rule of giving you information overload. This is new information. The next ism, I call it the Great ISM. It's almost religious. I am that I am, ism that I ism, okay? Which is at the specific level, what do we mean by creativity? There are three types of creativity. The first, the I, is invention. It's making something out of nothing. I take exception to my brothers who are physicists. They say nothing is ever created out of, something's never created out of nothing. Yeah. There is. When it comes to human endeavor, there certainly is. Because before Beethoven graced this world, there was no Fifth Symphony. Before Shakespeare graced the world, there was no Othello. Before Picasso graced the world, well, there was no really weird representations of fish skeletons, okay? But those people are creative and they are inventors. And when we think of ourselves, and I need to get more creative, or I got that junior assistant somebody or other in my firm that needs to get creative, we tend to trap ourselves by saying if it's not invention, it's not creativity. And that's very, very depressing because we know something, in spite of any seminar you've ever been with, is you cannot create an inventor. You simply can't do it. No amount of training, no amount of incentive systems, no amount of managerial expertise is ever going to turn somebody into an inventor. I believe, and I believe it firmly, that's a gift from the Almighty. If you got it, you got it. If you ain't, you ain't. Now the problem is that most of us in this room accept that truism. And that depresses us to the point where we don't even try to be creative. Because we say, well, if I can't write the Fifth Symphony, why try? If I can't come up with a new economic system, why try even going into work and running a business? I just get depressed. And with depression goes the lack of effort. Well, I'm here to tell you that invention's only 1/3 of the game. There's 2/3 of the game that anybody can do, and those are the other two parts. The first is the S for synthesis. Synthesis is the simple act of putting together two things that have not been put together before. A cake server is a marvelous example. Take a look at cake, and you take a look at a shovel. And you put the two together, and you got a cake server. Nobody else has ever come up with it before. It is a creative act, but it's not one that requires you to invent. Another way to be creative is the M, the modification, which is all you do is you fix something up. You alter it a little bit so that it has a new use, can be used by new people, or does its old job better. You ever been at church and watched the little kids try to get a drink out of the drinking fountain? And there's the little ritual, Dad, 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 and Dad has to come and hold the kid up and prop him up on his knee like this, and the kid drinks and drinks and drinks and drinks and dribbles all over Dad's suit, and the whole works. You ever thought maybe you could improve that situation by inventing something called a footstool? Okay? Take a footstool that you see every day and just stick it next to the water fountain. You don't even have to invent it. That's modification. You just change the function. Putting pontoons on an airplane, very similar. Pontoons have been around for years. They use them in outriggers and canoes. But you put it on an airplane, and now you vastly increase the areas where that airplane can be used. Most of the world is water, not dry land. So we came up with an airplane that can only be landed on dry land. It's kind of a self-defeating thing. So pontoons, it's just a modification, but it opens things up enormously. When you realize that synthesis and modification are there, and I will tell you something else, that the money is made through synthesis and modification, not invention. Wealth and glory and power come through synthesis and modification. The Japanese don't do well inventing. They don't invent much at all. It's outside the culture. If I think that Dad is the agent of God and all-wise and all-knowing, why should I ever challenge the status quo? Why should I ever have a new idea? I shouldn't, should I? But to win Dad's favor, I'm going to take this one good idea he had last year and put it together with the good idea he had yesterday, and I'm going to synthesize it into something that's wonderful, and I'll call it, oh, I don't know, the Sony Walkman. Which is nothing more than the transistor radio back from 1955 with the tape deck from 1982, and you stick it together into something that takes over the marketplace. That's synthesis. Okay? You can synthesize, and you can modify. And if you stop to think about it, you probably do it all the time anyways, but you just never defined it as creativity. I can't do anything creative. I go through this with my wife, both at home and in her function with the American Express, where she is An executive person. And I said, no, she gets stumped. She said, you know, I really don't know what to do. I'm not creative enough to do this. And so we go through the pep talk. I said, okay, well, did you do this? Did you rearrange the traffic so that the boss no longer hits his hip on the corner of the desk and has to go to the doctor? Well, yeah, I did do that. Okay, that's a creative act. That's modification. Did anybody else do it? No. Did anybody else think of doing it? No. Did you do it? Yeah. What's the big deal? I said, you're so good at being creative that you discount your own creativity. And most of us do that. So remember that you are already creative. You just haven't labeled it as such. And that moves us into the next area.